Good evening and welcome into Gamecock Chalk Talk, the basketball version. I'm Corey Miller, Pastor Payne, here with you. Of course, transitioning from football season to talk, yes, men and women Gamecock basketball. Right here, we're going to break it down for you. And alongside me is the guy that is the best in the business when you're talking about basketball, the Captain Kerry Rich. Played basketball here at South Carolina, and of course, been on the radio, still on the radio doing this thing. And the AAU tournament, you've done all kinds of stuff over the years, Captain. You was a head coach before. You are the basketball guru.
Well, basketball is life for me, and this is my time of the year, and I like to call it early Christmas. And as much as I'm looking forward to talking about basketball, whether it's high school or South Carolina, as much as I look forward to shining that spotlight on basketball, I look forward to you showing your versatility, Pastor. Oftentimes we as athletes, we get pigeonholed, and we always want to get associated with the particular sport we played. But I know your passion. I know how much you enjoy the game of basketball, and I'm looking forward to sharing this stage with you so that you can show your versatility and your passion with regards to how much you enjoy the game of basketball.
Yeah, I was at athletic four. I was that point forward before Scottie Pippen. I love basketball. That was my first love. Of course, I got to 6'3" quickly and then started to grow that way. So I knew football would be my thing. But it did not steal the passion that I have for basketball. Of course, we used to go at it back in our days at South Carolina. I played in the PE Center. It was the football players versus the basketball players, and we went at it. And then these guys want to play football, but they couldn't do it with the pads on. That's the thing. Flag football, two-hand touch.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how tough you guys were, but we banged on the basketball court.
Well, I played 39 minutes against Old Dominion with the appendicitis.
There we go.
And was rushed to the hospital to have an appendectomy performed. So that's part of the toughness that basketball players actually have to play with from time to time.
All right. So there you go. That's a tough guy right here. Speaking of tough guys, Frank Martin has started to transition his basketball team. Had a couple of bad years, tough years, trying to really build his program. We saw the addition of Sindarius Stornwell, Marcus Stroman. Those guys are on campus now. You just had the major signing of one of the best basketball players in the country in P.J. Dozier. In your estimation, Captain, Frank Martin is beginning to turn this thing around.
He's beginning to turn it around, and you're beginning to now see some of the pieces that he's been trying to get in place. You're seeing some of these young guys slowly develop. You're seeing these guys put it together. You're seeing this team play with so much confidence, and that's what we've been waiting for. The developmental stages of certain things, especially when you're talking about a program, it's not always pretty. And I think football fans right now certainly know what we're talking about. When you're depending on young guys, when you're depending on inexperienced guys to get it done for the first time on the big stage, just the overall transition is so difficult. It's so tough for guys, young kids, to get it. And now you're asking them to do it under a pressurized situation night in and night out. And that's just so much to ask of young kids. Only maybe a limited number of kids can get it done that way. But we're seeing this team slowly develop into what Frank Martin envisioned when he first took over here in Columbia.
Well, when you talk about, thrown into the fire, Sindarius now is a leader in the second year of the program. Ty Johnson has come back. He's a leader of this basketball team. So you got some good leaders, but then you throw in Marcus Stroman, a guy from right here in Columbia, Keaton High School, who wanted to be a Gamecock. Just talk about his maturation process, because he's been really, really nice as a basketball player.
Still early in the season, but I think a big surprise for many of the onlookers, many of the spectators that are now seeing Marcus Stroman play the game of basketball. I've followed this kid's career since he was in the 8th grade, so I saw him grow. I saw him develop. And I'll say this, I'm around high school, college basketball players all of the time. One of the highest basketball IQs I've ever seen a player with that age have. He understands the game. He's very cerebral. He has a nice feel. And with that position that he plays, that position of point guard, that's the one position that can't be manufactured. It's the one position that can't be taught. Right. And he has all of the things necessary, minus a jump shot, a consistent jump shot. And once he develops that, this offseason is going to be key. He has to live in the gym and take this offseason very seriously. I think he's a jump shot away 2 years from now from being an all-SEC point guard, because he has all of the other intangibles needed to be a terrific SEC point guard. You wouldn't believe the number of debates I've had with the locals. And shamefully, I admit a lot of the locals were basketball players, guys that played college basketball that doubted Marcus Stroman's ability to transition to the next level. Let's just say the first couple of weeks, I've gotten a lot of calls apologizing, but still early. The scout report is going to start traveling just a little bit. It has to be a little bit more effective shooting the jump shot because end of the game situations, teams are going to double off of him. Teams are not going to guard him. They're going to concede the jump shot. He has to have enough confidence, whether he makes it or not. He has to have enough confidence to take that jump shot just to keep the defense honest.
Well, as a guy that, of course, has really surprised a lot of people, but he's going to be a good player. Has those big hands, can handle the basketball, has great vision. The Gamecocks, of course, coming off a huge win, 75-49 over Oklahoma State. When we come back after this break, we're going to transition. Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks, well, they're in their 4th week being #1. They are rocking and rolling. We'll talk Dawn Staley and the Lady Gamecocks, the captain and I, when we come back after this timeout. All right, welcome back to Gamecock Chalk Talk. The Pastor Payne alongside the captain, Kerry Rich. We're here to break down some Gamecock basketball for you. Of course, now it's time to talk about the women. The women has been really, really good. #1 for the 4th week in a row. And a lot of folks are saying, hey, you know, you're not playing anybody. The Gamecocks just came off a 111-49 win over Savannah State. They played some lighter opponents. But the reason why you are #1, because you can go to the place like Duke and win a top 10 matchup. You're special. Here's what the coach had to say after that ball game.
And I think we've learned, every game that we play, especially the tight ones, the Syracuse game, we've been to that place where, it is nip and tuck at the end. You need to get a stop. You need to, score. I take my hat off to our team who just fought and fought and fought and had so much resolve to getting it done.
Resolve is what the coach said, captain. And, of course, when you look at this basketball team, I remember asking Dawn Staley at SEC Media Day up in Charlotte. I said, Coach, you brought in these McDonald All-Americans. You have a quality team already. You got bench players. You got 5 starters. You don't have to really make any changes after you win 20-something ball games last year and go to the Sweet 16. Captain, she's done a phenomenal job of managing that talent because when you get those superstars in, they want to play right away. She's really done a great job with this basketball team.
She has done a great job in managing that talent and being able to keep all of the players on the same page, being able to keep all of the players connected, in tune to what's going on. Because you know what happens when you're coming off of a successful high school career, you're expecting to play. Your friends and family, they're expecting you to play. And when you don't have that take place, just that overall transition, there's some frustration that begins to set in place. Now, when you're winning, it trumps just about everything. So that helps and aids in the process of helping them understand how important it is to be a part of the team. But the one thing that I really appreciate about Dawn Staley, I think she's been tinkerish. She's been trying to see which lineup best suits this basketball team moving forward. But the one thing that I do appreciate about it is that she's maybe found a way to go back and include an Asia Doja. She thought about trying to play maybe five players with the same mentality, scoring mentality. But the one thing about basketball, it doesn't matter how much talent you have on the floor. You got to have pieces that fit together, meaning you got to have 1 or 2 role players that don't mind giving up a shot to make sure that ball is moved to the other side of the floor, giving up your shot to make sure you get a better shot, making sure that ball is rotated the way it needs to be rotated in that offensive set. And I think that's the one thing that you get from an Asia Doja. That's the one thing you get by bringing Elena Coates and Asia Wilson off the bench. Now, I don't think there's another team in the country that's bringing that type of firepower off the bench in Elena Coates and Asia Wilson.
I mean, when you think of Elena Coates, Elena Coates is special. The size, the soft touch. She's a special player. She's going to start 99% of other schools.
Yeah.
Asia Wilson is a young lady that we know is special. We were talking about this young lady for a long time from Heathwood Hall. Nice touch, can handle, can post up, she can shoot it. She's a scorer. Then you talk about Bianca Cuevas, a point guard that's got speed and athleticism. This team is stacked, and must I mention Tiffany Mitchell, who, by the way, is an All-American. We talk about all these names, Captain. There's an All-American in Tiffany Mitchell on this basketball team.
Absolutely, and I think it's been the biggest adjustment for her to try to incorporate what she does into what the team needs from her. When you're coaching a scorer like Tiffany Mitchell, your mindset as a coach has to be a little bit different because as a scorer, you're going to take some quick shots. You may take some bad shots every now and again, and she doesn't take many of them, which is evidenced by her field goal percentage. But you have to coach that player a little bit differently. She's done a really good job of incorporating what she does individually into what the team needs from her. And you were talking about Asia Wilson. In the basketball world, we call that skill set.
Right.
Being able to handle, being able to shoot it, being able to pass it, doing it in a very comfortable fashion. You know, oftentimes when you're talking to the young kids, they get caught up in the number of points that you're scoring.
Right.
Well, you can't trick coaches. When coaches come see you play, they want to see how well you handle the ball, how well you shoot it, how well you pass it, how well you think the game. They want to see how well you compete, your level of effort. Those things are part of a skill set. Asia Wilson brings all of that to the floor every single night.
Every single night, coming off the bench, scoring 20, 23 points. And again, to me, what's most important is you go get humble people that can do that. Because, again, she's a McDonald's All-American, could have gone to school anywhere she wanted to, but humble enough even to come off the bench, but she's contributing in a special way. I mean, so I think it's a great basketball team. Of course, once you get in the SEC play, it's going to, tighten up. But you go on the road and get a top 10 win against Duke, that's a special win, and that gives this team a great deal of confidence. So that's some good stuff right there for the women's basketball team. When we come back, news and notes from Spurs and Feathers. Brian Hand, he'll join us and talk about maybe some injuries and things that are going on with the team and what's the inside. We like to call it the inside. That's coming up after this timeout. All right, welcome back to Chalk Talk. Corey Miller now joined with Brian Hand of Spurs and Feathers. It's now time for your news and notes. Of course, it is the basketball version. I'm getting used to making that transition because when you have done football for so long, Brian, your mind just automatically thinks it's football, but now it's time for the round ball. The Gamecocks, the men and the women. Of course, the Gamecocks, the men are playing on Friday night.
Yep.
And they are taking on the Clemson Tigers.
Yep.
This is a rivalry. We're not talking football. This is basketball. And Frank Martin wants it to be sold out.
If you can't get excited, then you're not a Gamecock
Something wrong
fan.
with
Yeah, there's something wrong. You just don't like sports, really,
Right.
to be honest with you. Yeah, this is a great time of year. Right now, the Gamecocks are, 5-3, having a great year. And Frank Martin wants sold out. Clemson's highest attendance so far this year, just over 7,000.
That's it.
South
Little
Carolina's averaging 11,000 fans. So it's already going to play a big deal into it because there's going to be that many people there. He wants 18 there. And, and they're giving away Gamecock Club members, get in free.
Nice.
But you know what else? If you come with the Gamecock Club member, you
get
get
in
in free.
free.
You get in free.
ride
If you're
one of
with that
those guys.
group, you just ride with one of those guys, you get in free. So Frank Martin wants it sold out, and he wants a lot of people in there to help them try to beat the Clemson Tigers for the first time in his tenure at Carolina.
Well, no doubt about it. And I think a lot of that's because Frank and Dawn both have done the groundwork of getting out into the public, making themselves visible, making the players visible, signing autographs, taking pictures, kissing babies, the things that you need to do to be successful. And it start with the fans. You got to get the fans, for the men especially, get the fans back in that CLA because there was such a bad vibe when Darren Horn left. Well, I hate to bring that name up again, but it was. But Frank has done a nice job, and Dawn Staley, of getting the fans back interested in basketball.
Yeah, they really have. And Frank earlier this year joked when we were at a press conference to the media that I'm seeing you more than I'm seeing my family. But that's just what it's had to be because he has to put himself out there. You had the 8K in 8 days where the team was getting out there with Dawn Staley and the women's basketball too. Same thing. They're number one in the nation, but you know what? They're always having events. They have this pregame chalk talks. Yesterday they gave out biscuits and different things to to season ticket holders. They both Frank and Dawn really care about this community and want basketball to succeed, even past them, really, in this area.
Well, another thing they were doing was giving away, when they, not giving away, but when they delivered the tickets, the players were delivering the tickets. So a lot of great gestures by both these programs. Speaking of these programs, of course, you mentioned the Lady Gamecocks still number one for the fourth week in a row, and largely because a lot of players are playing well. But what about Miss Evium? She's been pretty special, and she got an award this week.
Yeah, she did. We even had a story yesterday after the win over Savannah State. She had a nice day at the office. She went in there, did the work. She earned the Ag South Student Athlete of the Week award from South Carolina Athletics. Just quietly, she's doing all the little things, and you need the person that's doing all the little things for the Gamecocks as they continue to stay on top of college basketball.
No doubt about it. Now, both these teams have had a couple of injuries.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at some of the injuries here for the men and the women. You can see there, Michael Carrera. What's the situation?
Yeah, well, he's been out for the last 3 games with a concussion. Got to be careful with a concussion. So, expected to come back. Should be ready for Clemson. What that means, how much he plays, who knows. But they're expecting to be back in practice this week. Shatari White, with her right ankle, is kind of not pushing it. They're trying to get her better. As we just talked about, they're number one in the nation for a reason.
Right.
They got depth, so they're not trying to push her, and they're giving her time to rest it.
No doubt about it. So these teams are doing very well, the men and the women. Appreciate my man Brian Hand for being with us here each and every week. All right, we're going to hit a break. When we come back, the captain and I, we'll talk about Clemson and what that matchup looked like for the Gamecocks. It's coming up next after this time out. Welcome back to Chalk Talk. Of course, now we're going to kind of look at some upcoming games, and we'll get to that in just a moment. One of the things I forgot to ask the captain earlier, Captain, when you look at both these teams and the expectations, football team came in, top 10 ranked, highly expectations from this ball club was a disappointment. When you look at Frank Martin and this men's basketball team, what's a good year in your estimation? Of course, I kind of know the answer before I even ask you that, but I want to hear you say it. What's a good year for the men? And then I'll follow that by saying, what's a good year for the Lady Gamecocks?
Well, thankfully, the men's basketball program aren't going to be subjected to the same type of expectations the football team was.
Right.
When you're talking college basketball, I think the magic number will always be 20. That 20-game mark always seems to serve as the barometer. Anything close to that, obviously, would be a really, really good season for the Gamecocks. I don't know whether that's possible this year. I know they're going to win some games that people aren't expecting them to win, but I said several weeks ago, way before the SEC, before the basketball season even started, after Kentucky, you can put the rest of the teams in the bag and just close your eyes and just grab, because you don't see much separation.
I was going to say, because Florida don't seem to be as good this year. They don't normally that number 2 team, but Kentucky is special. But so South Carolina could find themselves in the mix.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, just because of how they're playing. Defense is going to be their calling card. We saw that against Oklahoma State. And, one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to basketball, people think you get excited as a player when you're just scoring points.
Right.
Well, what's fun is when you're playing defense and you're taking the other team out of what they want to do.
Right.
And you see the uneasiness, you see the frustration, you see the anxiety, and you're getting easy opportunities on the other end of the floor. We saw that against Oklahoma State from South Carolina. That's going to be their calling card. Offensively, they're playing with so much more confidence. With the guards, Ty Johnson, Dwayne Notice, Sindarius Thornwell, he's going to come around. Slumping a little bit early. I think he's now finding out when you're that guy on the scouting report and you have 3 check marks by your name, that means you're a priority for the opponent. Yeah. And he's finding it out now, but he's a great kid. He's going to continue to work hard, and we'll see Sindarius get back on track here soon. But thankfully, the other guys we just mentioned, those guys are playing well. They're playing with a lot of confidence.
Now, for the women, it's a totally different scenario.
Yeah.
We talk about expectations.
Yeah.
You're talking about a team that won the SEC last year, a team that made some ground in the tournament, though they didn't go as far as they wanted to, ran into a tough North Carolina team there at the end. But the expectations with this team, the folks that they had coming back, really lost one person, and I don't want to speak lowly of, but I'm just saying she wasn't a major contributor. Let's just say that. And then you add 3 more top freshmen, like Jatari White and Aja and Bianca now with this team. Expectations are out of this roof, or off the roof, I should say.
Yeah, very nicely and respectfully said, by the way, about the departed player. And you know what? Dawn Staley has not shied away from the expectations. She's embraced them. Her team has embraced them. Every time they take the floor, whether it's practice, whether it's game time, they are playing with one mission in mind, and that's to compete for a national title. We've seen this team get far and advance deep into the tournament the last couple of years, but the one thing has always served as their Achilles heel. their inability to make perimeter jump shots when it counted. And that's the one question mark I now have. I want to see how well this team plays against a team, an opponent that's going to zone them, because that's going to be the calling card against them. That's going to be the recipe against them. They're so big, so it's going to be very difficult to match up with them when it comes to man-to-man defense, or in this case, woman-to-woman defense. But teams are going to play zone defense against the South Carolina Gamecocks. How well do they shoot those perimeter jump shots as they advance deeper into the NCAA tournament? But again, Dawn Staley hasn't shied away from it. She's embraced the expectations, and anything shy of competing for a national championship this year, shall we say, a disappointment.
Yeah, I was kind of say that because I think this team definitely has the makeup to do that. When we talk about national championship, we're going to look at some schedules. Let's start with the men. And this is rivalry week, Captain. When we make so much of South Carolina football in Clemson. Well, it's that time again on December the 19th. They take on the Clemson Tigers at home at 7 o'clock. And then, of course, Coker on the 21st. But these are two, I would say, big games still when you talk about a team that's building.
The Clemson game is a very, very big game, especially coming on the heels of the big win against Oklahoma State. Obviously, that was a step in the right direction for that program, South Carolina, that is. And spent some time with Frank Martin a few days ago, and he's looking forward to this Clemson game. This is a big, big game for South Carolina. One, he hasn't beaten them since he's been here. Clemson is now playing much better. They're 3-0 against the SEC, beating Arkansas, Auburn, and whoever the other SEC team was. They're 3-0 against the SEC. South Carolina, I think, will beat Clemson. It's not going to be easy. I think they have the pieces in place to be very, very good against Clemson Friday night. And again, there's some momentum. They're feeling good about themselves with the way they played against Oklahoma State. And Sunday, I look forward to Coach Smatzer from Hartsville, and homecoming for Eric Bethel Jr., former star guard over at Dutch Fork several years ago. He's a lead scorer for Coker. So it's always good when Frank Martin and Steve Spurrier, Dawn Staley, they always find a way to include the in-state teams as part of their schedule. I look forward to seeing Coker come to town Sunday. But first, Clemson, South Carolina, big, big game. Frank Martin is excited. The team is excited. They should take care of business. It's not going to be easy.
No, it won't be easy, because anytime you play that rival game, it can kind of go either way. But I like the fact that a lot of folks probably going to come out. Let's pack the house at the CLA for that ball game. Just, of course, for the women, we're not going to say much about them. Their schedule real quick. They go to Minnesota because we got Hampton. They go on the road to Hampton, Central Michigan, up in Minnesota at 1. And, of course, against Liberty, 3 games that probably the Gamecocks should to win that one to stay at number 1, in just my opinion. So we'll just do that real quickly. Well, this is our first episode of Gamecock Talk, the basketball version. I got to get used to saying that, the basketball version.
Yeah, get used to it.
I'm used
It's my time of the year now.
It is the captain's time of the year. We appreciate you joining us, because we'll be back next Monday night with some more Talk, the basketball version. Have a good night.